What if the reason you feel tired isn't because you're doing too much, but because you're living too little? Not physically tired, mentally tired. That strange heaviness you feel at night when you lie down and think, I did a lot today, but somehow nothing that really mattered. You wake up, you scroll, you rush, you respond, you survive, and then you repeat it. Days blur, weeks vanish, months disappear, and somewhere in the back of your mind there's a quiet fear you don't say out loud. What if I wake up one day and realize I wasted my life? Sit with that for a second. Don't brush it off. Does that feel familiar? Because most people don't notice this happening, not at first. Life doesn't get wasted in dramatic moments. It gets wasted in tiny, invisible decisions. The extra hour of scrolling, the I'll start tomorrow, the I'm too tired today, the it's not that serious. And slowly, without you realizing it, you start living on autopilot. You stop choosing, you start reacting. But here's where it gets real. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're not broken. You're distracted. Distracted from the fact that your life is quietly slipping into a pattern you never consciously chose. And the scary part? You get used to it. You adapt to a life you never wanted. You normalize feeling stuck. You convince yourself this is just how adulthood feels. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not entertained, not distracted, alive. Take a moment. Really think about it. Most people struggle to answer that because they confuse comfort with fulfillment, and comfort is dangerous. Comfort makes you feel safe while your potential slowly suffocates. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Wasting your life doesn't feel like failure. It feels like routine. You go to work, you pay bills, you talk to people, you laugh sometimes. From the outside, everything looks fine. But inside, there's this quiet voice saying, this can't be it. And you try to ignore it. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. You tell yourself everyone feels this way. You tell yourself you should be grateful. But that voice doesn't go away. It gets louder at night and softer in the morning when distractions return. I used to think something was wrong with me for feeling this, like I was ungrateful, like I expected too much from life. But then I realized something that changed everything. That discomfort you feel, that restlessness, that quiet dissatisfaction, it's not a flaw, it's a signal. A signal that you're meant for more than survival. But here's the problem. You've been trained your whole life to survive, not to live. You were taught how to be responsible, how to be productive, how to be busy. But nobody taught you how to be intentional. And without intention, time eats you alive. You don't lose your life in one big mistake. You lose it in 1,000 small, unconscious ones. Think about this. If someone asked you, what are you building with your life right now? Could you answer clearly? Or would you say something vague like, I'm just figuring things out? Be honest. Does this hit a little too close? Because figuring things out turns into years faster than you think. And this is where the shift begins. Not with motivation, not with discipline, with awareness. Awareness that the way you're living right now is not accidental. It's patterned, it's habitual, it's unconscious. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how often you choose easy over meaningful, how often you choose comfort over growth, how often you say later to the things that actually matter. And that realization is uncomfortable. but it's powerful. Because you can't change a life you don't realize you're wasting. Wait till you hear this. The biggest lie you've ever believed is this: I still have time. You say it when you procrastinate. You say it when you delay dreams. You say it when you settle. I'll do it later. But later is a trap. Later is how years disappear. Later is how potential dies quietly. And one day, later turns into regret. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you keep living exactly like this for the next 5 years, where you be? Same habits, same mindset, same distractions. Does that thought scare you? Or does it feel normal? Because if it feels normal, that's the real danger. And this is where things change. Not because you suddenly become motivated, but because you start seeing clearly. You realize the enemy isn't your lack of effort, it's your lack of direction. You're moving, but not toward anything that matters. You're busy, but not purposeful. You're surviving, but not living. A quiet urgency, a gentle panic, a realization that your life is happening right now, not someday, not when things calm down, not when you feel ready, right now. And that's when it hits you. You've been waiting to feel ready. Ready to start, ready to change, ready to live differently. But readiness is a myth. Nobody wakes up one morning feeling perfectly prepared to take control of their life. They just reach a point where staying the same becomes more painful than changing. And you might be standing at that exact point without realizing it. Because the truth is, you're exhausted. Not from work, not from responsibilities, from carrying a version of yourself that you don't even like anymore. You've outgrown the way you live, but you haven't updated the way you think. So you keep trying to fix your life with the same mindset that created the problem. That's like trying to unlock a door with the wrong key, over and over again, and getting frustrated when it doesn't open. Now here's where it gets interesting. The problem isn't that you don't know what to do. You do. You know you should take care of your health. You know you should focus. You know you should stop wasting time. You know you should start that thing you keep postponing. So why don't you? Why do you keep choosing the short-term comfort that you know leads to long-term regret? Why do we do this, even when we know better? Think about it. Because the issue isn't knowledge, it's identity. You're still operating as the person who survives the day, not the person who designs their life. That's a massive difference. One reacts, the other chooses. And right now, most of your decisions are reactions. You wake up and check your phone. Reaction. You work based on urgency, not priority. Reaction. You relax based on exhaustion, not intention. Reaction. You're not living your life. You're responding to it. And slowly, that turns into a life you never consciously picked. Be honest. Is this you, or just me? Because once you see this pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. You notice how easily you get pulled into distractions, how easily you say yes to things that don't matter, how easily you postpone the things that do. But here's the part that changes everything. You don't fix a wasted life by doing more. You fix it by becoming more conscious. You start asking different questions, not what do I have to do today, but what actually matters today. Not how do I stay busy, but how do I stay aligned. And that shift sounds small, but it's life-changing. Because for the first time, you stop measuring your day by productivity and start measuring it by purpose. And purpose feels very different. Purpose feels intentional. Purpose feels lighter. Purpose feels alive. This next part changes everything.
You realize that most of your exhaustion comes from doing things you don't care about in a way you didn't choose. No wonder you feel drained. You've been living on autopilot for so long that intentional living feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, like trying to use a muscle you forgot you had. But here's the beautiful part. That muscle is still there. You can rebuild it, and it starts with something very simple. You begin noticing your choices. That's it. You notice when you reach for your phone without thinking. You notice when you delay something important. You notice when you choose easy over meaningful. And instead of judging yourself, you just become aware. Because awareness breaks autopilot. And autopilot is where life gets wasted. I used to think change required some dramatic action, a big decision, a big plan, a big moment. But real change is quiet. It starts in ordinary moments, moments nobody sees, moments where you choose differently, for no reason other than you're tired of wasting your life. That's powerful, and slightly scary, because now you can't blame circumstances. You can't blame time. You can't blame motivation. You start realizing you've had more control than you thought. And that realization is uncomfortable, but freeing. If this makes sense, say something. Because most people never reach this point of awareness. They stay distracted until it's too late. You're here. You're seeing it. And now you have a choice. You can go back to autopilot, or you can start living on purpose. And living on purpose doesn't mean quitting your job or changing everything overnight. It means you stop drifting. You stop letting the day decide who you are. You start deciding who you are before the day begins. And that's when the shift happens. You don't feel overwhelmed anymore. You feel clear. You don't feel rushed. You feel directed. You don't feel stuck. You feel awake. And once you feel awake, you can't go back to sleep.
And once you feel awake, something strange happens. You start noticing how much of your life was built on habits you never chose. The way you spend your mornings, the way you talk to yourself, the way you handle stress, the way you escape when things feel heavy. None of it was intentional. It was inherited. From culture, from childhood, from people around you, from whatever felt easiest at the time. And for the first time, you realize you don't have to keep living that way. But this is where resistance shows up. Because change sounds exciting, until it asks you to let go of who you've been. And letting go of an old identity feels uncomfortable, even if that identity is the reason you feel stuck. You might catch yourself thinking, this is just how I am. I've always been like this. I'm not disciplined. I'm not focused. I'm not that kind of person. And that thought right there is the real trap. Because you've mistaken habits for personality. You've confused patterns for identity. But here's the part nobody tells you. You are not your habits. You are the person repeating them. And if you're the one repeating them, you can stop. You can choose differently. And that's terrifying. Because now, you don't get to hide behind, this is who I am anymore. Now it becomes, this is what I keep choosing. Think about that for a second. That's not guilt. That's power. Because if it's a choice, it can be changed. This next realization hits hard. You don't need motivation to stop wasting your life. You need standards. Motivation comes and goes. Standards stay. When your standard becomes, I don't waste my time, your behavior starts adjusting automatically. When your standard becomes, I don't live on autopilot, you start paying attention. When your standard becomes, I respect my life too much to drift, everything changes. And this is subtle. Nobody sees it, but you feel it. You feel different. You move differently. You speak differently. You think differently. Which one are you right now? Drifting or deciding. Because this is the turning point. This is where the hero stops blaming the world and starts taking quiet control. Not loud control. Not dramatic control. Quiet control. The kind where you wake up and know what matters. The kind where you say no without guilt. The kind where you choose meaningful over easy. And the crazy part? It doesn't make life harder, it makes life lighter. Because chaos is heavy. Drifting is heavy. Wasting time is heavy. Clarity is light. Direction is light. Purpose is light. Wait till you hear this. You start feeling proud of yourself again. Not because of big achievements, but because you're finally living in alignment with who you want to be. You stop needing constant entertainment. You stop needing constant distraction. You start enjoying simple progress. And that feeling, that quiet satisfaction, is addictive in the best way. You begin craving growth instead of escape. You begin craving discipline instead of comfort. You begin craving awareness instead of numbness. And that's when it hits you. You're not trying to fix your life anymore. You're building a new one, slowly, deliberately, one choice at a time. And here's something most people won't admit. Living unconsciously is easier. That's why so many people stay there. Because being aware means being responsible, and responsibility is uncomfortable at first. But then it becomes empowering, because now every small decision feels meaningful. Every hour feels valuable. Every day feels intentional. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? Because if it does, you're already changing. You just haven't realized it yet. You're not the same person who started this video. You're seeing things differently. And once you see differently, you can't unsee. You can't go back to wasting your life the same way. You might still slip. You might still procrastinate. You might still drift sometimes, but now you'll notice. And noticing is where control begins. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be present, and that alone changes everything. And now, something quiet settles inside you. Not excitement, not hype, not motivation. Something better. Clarity. You start seeing your life as something fragile, not in a fearful way, in a respectful way. You realize how limited your time actually is. How many days have already passed without you being fully there? How many moments you rushed through? How many hours disappeared without meaning? And instead of feeling regret, you feel urgency. A calm, steady urgency. The kind that whispers, "Don't do that again." This next part changes everything. You stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" And you start asking, "What kind of life am I trying to build?" That question changes your decisions instantly. Because feelings change every hour. But direction stays. You start choosing actions that match the future you want, not the mood you're in. And slowly, your days begin to look different. You wake up with intention. You move with awareness. You speak with purpose. You rest without guilt. You work without resentment. Because now you understand something most people miss. Peace doesn't come from doing less. It comes from doing what matters. And when your life starts filling with what matters, there's no room left for waste. You don't scroll the same way. You don't complain the same way. You don't procrastinate the same way. Not because you forced yourself, but because it no longer fits who you're becoming. You've outgrown the version of you that used to drift. You've outgrown the version of you that waited for motivation. You've outgrown the version of you that said, "I'll start tomorrow." You're starting to live like someone who respects their own existence. And here's the quiet truth. That's rare. Very rare. Most people never reach this awareness. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They stay tired. They stay numb. Because awareness requires honesty. And honesty requires courage. Most people won't admit they're wasting their life. You just did. And that's why you're different now. This is the moment the hero fully changes. Not on the outside. On the inside. You stop trying to escape your life and start showing up for it. Fully. Presently. Deliberately. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You don't need a new job. You don't need a new city. You don't need a new personality. You just needed to wake up. And now that you are, you see how simple it actually is. Not easy. Simple. Live intentionally. Choose consciously. Act deliberately. Repeat daily. That's it. That's how you stop wasting your life. It's not about doing more. It's about drifting less. Think about that. Drifting less. That's all this ever was. And here's something you'll notice in the coming days. You'll catch yourself before you fall into old patterns. You'll pause before wasting time. You'll think before reacting. You'll choose before acting. That pause is your power. That pause is the space where a better life gets built. One decision at a time. If this makes sense, say something, because this realization is too important to keep silent. You are not stuck. You are unaware. You are not lazy. You are drifting. You are not behind. You are asleep. And now, you're awake. And once you're awake, you can't go back. You won't want to. You'll start protecting your time, protecting your energy, protecting your attention, because you finally understand. Your life is happening right now, not someday, not when you're ready, not when things are perfect. Right now. And that's the real message. Don't waste it. Don't trade it for comfort. Don't trade it for distraction. Don't trade it for autopilot. You don't get this time back, but you do get this moment. And this moment is enough to change everything. If this hit home, don't just scroll. Subscribe and start choosing a lighter way to live.